Tarian. Since joining SOLIDWORKS in 2005, Craig has been part of the team that sets the direction for future SOLIDWORKS software development. He has over 25 years of industry experience, including work as an automation engineer, product designer, CAD/CAM implementation consultant, and CAD software company founder. Craig holds a DSME from Worcester Polytechnic Institute and is also a graduate of the General Electric Manufacturing Development Program, where he gained experience as a CNC machine operator and programmer, machine shop foreman, and a buyer in the aircraft engine division. Welcome, Craig, and thank you for joining us today. It's all yours.
Thanks, Amy, and hello to everybody. Welcome to this presentation on SOLIDWORKS Costing. My name is Craig Tarian, as Amy said. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at SOLIDWORKS. Before we get started, we'd just like to have you respond to a couple of polling questions. So if you could, the first question is, which best describes your company? And the reason we're asking this is to find out if you're basically a manufacturing company, a design-only company, or maybe a company that does both design and manufacturing.
Excellent. We'll just give people a couple more minutes to answer the question. But so far we're seeing a majority of people saying that they design products and mostly manufacture in-house. So go ahead and answer the question and we'll move on to the next one. So as you can see, we had about 7% say they design products only, 27% use outside manufacturing, 52% use in-house manufacturing, and 14% do mostly just the manufacturing of their products.
Great. And secondly, just trying to find out what you actually do. What's your job? And it's a little different than our normal surveys. So we may have some people out there in purchasing, possibly even, or people who just do cost estimating. So we're just trying to find out who we're talking to.
Just give people a couple more minutes. But we have an overwhelming majority of people that are product designers and engineers. We do have about 12% of owners and managers here, which is great to have you guys on the line. Okay. So here you can see we've got nearly 70% of product designers and engineers. We've got 10% manufacturing and CAM programmers. We've got 7% cost estimators and 2% of purchasing and buyers.
Yeah, it's good to see the purchasing guys, too. I used to be a buyer at one time. Great. And then finally, in the intro here, the last question, what is your current method that you use for cost estimation? So it may be, as a designer, you might always send your estimates out outside for estimates. Or you may have an expert internally, someone who might say use some kind of an estimating software, or may even just say, you know, that product looks like it would probably be about $20 or so to manufacture. So which method most is in line with how you currently do your estimates?
Fantastic. And we're actually seeing a pretty even split of about 40% send out to manufacturers for estimates and 40% use spreadsheets.
Okay.
Everyone can see them
yep.
as well.
Great.
Let you go on.
Okay. So let me get into the presentation here. So basically, what we want to talk today about is SOLIDWORKS Costing, how we can help do a few things. One of them is for people who are designing products, one of the key things that we've found, and one of the biggest drivers, especially over the last few years, actually the #1 driver, has been designing to hit cost targets. So making products at a certain cost of to manufacture those products. One of the biggest problems for both manufacturers and for designers has been the speed at which they can do their estimates. So the designers say, we want to make a decision which way to go on a design based on cost, but we have to wait maybe 2 weeks even to get a quote back. And for manufacturers and for people who work in manufacturing, they want quotes instantly. They want to be able to produce those quotes, get those quotes back to their customers as fast as possible. So SOLIDWORKS Costing is targeted at all of these issues. So what is SOLIDWORKS Costing? Basically, it's automated manufacturing cost estimation inside of SOLIDWORKS. So as you're designing in SOLIDWORKS, or if you just open a model in SOLIDWORKS, you can hit SOLIDWORKS Costing and it will automatically cost your part. And it will give you basically in the end a cost for that part with a breakdown of material and manufacturing costs, right? The great thing as a designer and also as a manufacturer is anytime you get a change to that part, the cost will update every time. SOLIDWORKS Costing is driven by customizable manufacturing templates. So as a manufacturer, you can customize SOLIDWORKS Costing to fit the way that you do your work. So if you have lasers or water jets, or you use plasma cutting, or whatever kind of milling and drilling operations that you do, you can customize it with things like speeds and feeds and the speed of a cut of like a laser machine. So it's fully customizable that way to give you a more accurate result. And it works with any 3D CAD model, by the way, not just SOLIDWORKS. It works great with SOLIDWORKS, but you can also import models from other systems, and SOLIDWORKS Costing will automatically cost those files too. Finally, the packaging. It's included in SOLIDWORKS Professional and Premium. So if you already have SOLIDWORKS Professional or Premium, you already have SOLIDWORKS Costing. SOLIDWORKS Costing came out in SOLIDWORKS 2012. In the first version of SOLIDWORKS Costing in 2012, we did sheet metal and a little bit of manufacturing, basic mill drill. Well, we've expanded that a lot in 2013, and now we've added turning and mill turn and multi-body parts, and we've really expanded the capabilities of machining and also gone back and continued to refine the sheet metal package also. So what are the key benefits of SOLIDWORKS Costing? For designers, you can design for cost up front. You can eliminate redesign for cost later, so you're not going back to an existing design and having to redesign that all the time. You can make design decisions more quickly based on cost. And you get faster, more repeatable quotes than just kind of guesstimates and air quotes. Key benefits for engineering management: you can hit your cost targets and maintain healthy product margins. And you can also, especially in an environment where you have design and manufacturing in-house, you can break the barriers between design and manufacturing so that your designers can be designing with input from your manufacturers without the need for your manufacturing people to sit there with your designers. And for manufacturers, it's all about instant quotes, getting that quote fast, bringing a part in that's a SOLIDWORKS part or maybe any 3D CAD part, and running it through SOLIDWORKS Costing and get that quote back. We even have reports that you can output in a Word format that can act as your quotes. And again, because this data is your data, it's your manufacturing input, it's reliable and repeatable. You don't have to worry about a black box situation where we're telling you how much something should cost. You're putting your numbers in there. Okay? So what processes does SOLIDWORKS Costing cover? Well, it covers sheet metal, what we call basic sheet metal cutting, like laser, water jet, plasma, wire EDM, and even turret punching. Not total turret punching, but turret punching that needs a little bit of tweaking. And then we also have bend operations and punches and things like that. We also do multi-body sheet metal parts. So anybody who creates sheet metal assemblies, assemblies that are made out of multiple sheet metal parts, you can cost that. Or if you combine machine parts and parts that are plate parts and parts that are sheet metal parts, you can cost those parts all at once also. So multi-body costing is also available. On the other side, there's milling and drilling, and there's also turning and mill turn. And so turning and mill turn were added in 2013, as well as multi-body. And also, we have expanded the capabilities of machining. Okay? So basically, what are the outputs you get from costing? You can output reports. As I said earlier, you can output Word documents that can act as quotes, so you can save them as information about your design. You can also roll up the costs either in a bill of materials or an assembly visualization in SOLIDWORKS. So you can have cost as a parameter or as a property in your bill of materials. As I stated earlier, costing is customizable. It's driven by manufacturing templates that look like spreadsheets. And I noticed about 40% of you said that you currently use spreadsheets to cost parts. Well, that's great, because we base costing on spreadsheet-like technology. except what we do is we extract all the geometry information and then plug it into a spreadsheet. So we find how many holes there are and what size they are, and how big a pocket is and how much volume that pocket has, and we plug it into your spreadsheet, basically. So let's get right into a demonstration of SOLIDWORKS Costing. So on the screen, I just have a typical SOLIDWORKS sheet metal part. I'm sitting here in 2013, but SOLIDWORKS Costing also runs in 2012. And I want to cost this part. You see this part's made up of typical sheet metal features. I've got flanges, I've got some punches, I've mirrored some features, I've got some regular cuts, I've got a hem feature, and I've got a flange, a base flange in there. All right, very typical SOLIDWORKS sheet metal part. Now I want to cost that part. Under the Evaluate tab or under Tools, either way, you can hit Costing. And when you hit Costing, that's it. SOLIDWORKS automatically goes in and costs your part. Now the way it does this is, if you look on the right here, there's what we call the costing template. And basically think of the costing template as being kind of like your selection of what factory you're going to run it in or which machine you're going to run it on. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, in this case, I'm going to run this part at my favorite sheet metal shop called Fabulous Fabricators. And I'm going to click on that. And you see that my cost right now is about $12.73. It gives me some feedback. It says this part is a steel part. It's plain carbon steel. The thickness of this part is such and such because it's pulling all that information from the model. It tells me what the cost of the material is currently. The cost of the material here is $3.35 per kilogram. It's telling me how it's calculating the blank size. So let's look at that blank size, okay? So if I look at the blank size on this part, typically by default people would take what we call the bounding box of the part. But you can also look at it in different ways. You could look at the flat pattern of that part. You can type in a custom sheet size or a custom area. So let's just go back to our bounding box. Most people, manufacturers, will know you add a little bit of space between your parts if you're cutting them in a laser or something like that. So I'm going to add about a ½ inch here, or 12 millimeters. That adds a little bit of cost to my part because it added a little bit of material. So you see down below my cost went up here. I went from $12.73 to $13.02 because my material cost increased. Okay? So on the right side of costing, these are all your controls and your inputs. These are the factory I'm going to run it at or the vendor I'm going to run it at, what materials I want to run, what thicknesses, how I want to tweak my my blank sizes if I want to, and even how many parts I'm going to run. You know, how am I going to order 100 parts but maybe only run a lot size of 10? Maybe I'm only going to order 10 per month or something like that. So you can tweak that also. On the left side, this is more or less a process sheet for how to make your part, for how to manufacture it. Okay, and we start with things like, well, maybe one of the things you do every time in your factory is you have an ERP entry. You know, you get your blank materials in, and you enter in that that these parts are being now they're in the shop and they're being routed through the manufacturing process. You have a laser setup because this part in this case is being run through a laser. It saw that there was a special hem in this product, so it knew that it needed some kind of a hem tool capability. The bends were there, so you're going to be running brake operations. We have cut paths, and if I highlight this first one, you see that the outside of the part is highlighted, and you see that it gives me the length of that cut. Here it's around 1,100 millimeters, and as I go through, I see that every cut path can be identified. It highlights each one of these cuts in blue. Then I have my bends, all right, and all my different bends that come up. And then finally I have that hem flange I mentioned earlier. Also, I can include special things like punches. In this case, I have some louvers that I have in my design. So let's see how a designer might use SOLIDWORKS Costing to either not only get a quote, but also how we'll use it in design to make decisions. So at this point in my design, my product is at $13.02 per unit. I'm going to set a baseline. I'm going to save that information. And I want to see if I can, well, first of all, I forgot. This is a plain carbon steel part. So I have to worry about if this part's going to rust. So one of the things I can do is I can add a custom operation here, one that I defined earlier for painting. I've got lots of custom operations I can define in SOLIDWORKS Costing, like anodizing, deburring, masking, shipping, special punches I want to use, welds, anything I want to define that isn't already defined on the model, I can add as a custom operation. So here I'm going to define painting. It's going to select all the faces, and it gives me a cost. It says, wow, the cost of painting this part is about $14, and that's because I'm running a relatively low volume, and I'm seeing the guy spray painting the part and everything. So my cost increased tremendously just by painting. It went up about 100% because that painting was a very labor-intensive thing that I was doing. So what's another option here? Maybe I can reduce that cost by picking another material. So let's go with stainless steel, for instance. Well, initially my cost went up, but remember, with stainless steel, I don't need my painting operation anymore, so I'm going to remove that. And in reality, my cost comes down. So originally that cost was around $32. Now it's come down to about $20. So I'm actually below where I was when I started with the plain carbon steel part. Okay? So that's how you can use SOLIDWORKS Costing to kind of drive your decisions that you're making for what you're going to do to the part. Let's set another baseline here. Let's say we're going to save where we are right now, and we're going to say, can we actually, what's going to happen to my part if I make a design change? So let's say I had to increase the length of this part here to, let's say, 400 millimeters. What happens? Well, of course, the cost goes up because both my manufacturing costs and my material costs go up. So the cost of that part by making that change went up 24%. All right? But I want to try to recoup as much of that cost back that I can, or get it back to where it was before. So maybe I say, well, what can I remove from this part? Maybe one of the things I can take out is this hem flange right here. That's a pretty expensive feature. It's $4 for that hem. So I'm going to take that hem out. I'm just going to suppress it. And you see right away that cost comes down. And now I'm at about 2046. All right? I'm basically where I was when I started this whole process. And if I want, I can continue to take geometry out, or I can change geometry to bring the cost down. So you get the idea of how this works. Now you can also output this information. So down here I'll create what we call a cost report. And this can be used either by manufacturers. This cost report is a Word document, the template of which can be customized. So you can add your company logos. You can remove any information that you don't want to see on this document. And you can use it as a quoting tool, or internally you can use it as a tracking tool as a designer to see how your changes affected cost over time. And you can even save this in the design binder in SOLIDWORKS. So here you have your information. For instance, you have the name of the part. You have the name of the template that you used. Fabulous Fabricators was the template that you used to do your costing. How many parts I'm costing. What the blank size is. And then it has even detailed information about each one of the cuts. How much cost was in cutting. How much was cost was in bending. And you always have the images there to let you know what the part looked like at that state. All right. So this is a great way either to save information about costing or to actually return a quote to a customer possibly. Okay. Now, besides sheet metal, we also have machining. So let's take a look at our machining capability. So we'll bring up this part right here. I've got a mill turn part. This is, again, new for 2013. We added mill turn capability. When I go in and cost that, it comes up. Initially, it says it's using A1 Machining Incorporated as my costing template. Again, that could be either one of my customers, or it might be one of my plants in my company. Initially, it comes up and says, okay, I'm going to try to run this part with a block piece of stock, but I can select either plate or cylindrical stock. And when I select the cylindrical stock, it's going to run turning, milling, and drilling operations on that part as it sees. So when I open up that process sheet, you see that I've got OD groove operation, I've got an ID turning operation, OD turning operations, and I even have a pocket milling operation here. So this would be a typical job shop mill turn type part that you would run on a mill turn machine. All right. Another type of machining is just straightforward milling and drilling. Let's look at another part for that. Just typical block type part, right? Boxy type part. Going to go in, hit costing on that. That part has been set up, same company, A1 Machining. And you see that it picks up all the information. It has my setups. It has my hole drilling information. And if I open that up, I can get into all my holes. I can highlight and see the time that it takes for each one of these features. It's saying for that counterbore, it's taking 10 seconds. And for that drill, it's taking 16. For that tapping operation, it's only taking about 4 seconds. So it actually gives me a time. Here's the pocket milling. It's taking about 15 seconds for that pocket milling operation there. And then you also have setups. So anytime you have to rotate or flip the part in order to be able to machine the part. If you have 5-axis capability on your machine, positional 5-axis, you can combine operations. So for instance, this hole right here, which is on the front of the part, it's on this face of the part right here, I might say I can access that all in one operation. So as a manufacturer, I would say move that to operation 2 and eliminate that whole setup. So now you can simulate a milling operation that's done. You can actually access both the top and the sides of the part all at once. So you can have 5-axis positional capabilities. All you have to do is eliminate the setup operations that you have there. All right. You can also go in and you can add, for instance, add operations like finishing and semi-finishing. You can change tooling. If you don't like the selection we have for tooling, you can select a different end mill. And when you do, your costs will update accordingly. All right. So, you know, right out of the box, SOLIDWORKS gives the designer a pretty good automated guess or cost estimate, should cost, on what the part should cost. And we have the details in it so that manufacturers can really get down to the nitty-gritty and go in and set up exactly the manufacturing operations they want. So now also in 13 for manufacturers that are out there, or for companies that have design and manufacturing especially, you can also, there are APIs to grab all the information out of costing and get that information down to other manufacturing applications. So you can get it down to your production planning people, to your CAM programmers or whatever. If you really look at the sheet, or if you look at the costing manager on the side, it's almost very similar to a process sheet. And there's information that's contained there that might be useful downstream. There, in 2013, there are APIs that you can go in and grab that information, pull that information out of costing, and send it down to downstream manufacturing applications. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint here. We had our next question. Now that you've seen what costing can do, I just wanted some information. There are some things here that we can't do, which we're probably going to look at in the future. Just want to know, what are the 3 can you pick 3 or less? Don't pick any more than 3, please. Pick 3 or less manufacturing processes that you are most interested in costing. So what are the ones that you're most interested in? So please pick 3 or less.
We'll just give people a couple more seconds to vote here. But it looks like most people, 70%, use milling, drilling, turning, and mill turn. Another 60% are using welding or assembly operations. And we do have a significant amount of sheet metal cut and bend.
Okay.
Here are the results.
Okay. Yep. Injection molding. Okay. So yeah, good break on those. Okay. Excellent. So basically, at this point, Amy, I'd like to open up to Q&A.
So we do have a few more quick polls for you guys. Want to find out from you, what are future topics for webinars on SOLIDWORKS costing? Okay. And then want to know from you, what is your current level of interest in SOLIDWORks? Are you, browsing general interest? Are you beginning your investigation into, SOLIDWORks 3D CAD and costing? Are you comparing or evaluating products? Are you ready to purchase? I'm guessing some of you probably already have SOLIDWORks. We have just one more question for you guys after this one before we can open it up to take some Q&A. Okay, and then the final question for today. Would you like any further information from us? Either a quote or pricing information from a SOLIDWORks representative? Would you like to have a product demo from one of our resellers? Would you like a salesperson to call you, or nothing at this time? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This does conclude the demonstration portion of our presentation, but we will continue with some Q&A.